You need to move. First class isn't for people like you." The words sliced through the quiet hum of American Airlines Flight 447, like a blade through silk. Victoria Sinclair stood in the narrow aisle, her perfectly manicured hand gripping her cream-colored Hermes bag, diamond bracelet catching the overhead lights. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an elegant chignon, not a strand out of place. The silk blouse beneath her tailored Chanel suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and she knew it. Seated in two, Amaya Rodriguez looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing cybersecurity protocols for tomorrow's meeting with Hollywood executives. At 32, Maya had learned to read people quickly. The woman standing over her radiated the kind of entitlement that money could buy but character couldn't teach. "Excuse me." Maya's voice remained level professional. She didn't move from her seat. Victoria's blue eyes narrowed. Everything about her screamed old money and older prejudices. "This section requires a certain caliber of passenger. I'm sure you understand." Around them, the first-class cabin of the Miami to Los Angeles flight was settling into its 8:47 a.m. departure routine. 24 passengers in 12 rows of premium seating, each having paid handsomely for the privilege. Maya belonged here more than most, though Victoria had no way of knowing that the casually dressed Latina woman in dark jeans and navy blazer was the founder and CEO of Digital Bridge Solutions, a cybersecurity empire worth $2.8 billion. Jennifer Walsh, the lead flight attendant, approached with the practiced smile of someone who dealt with difficult passengers before. At 29, the Irish-American woman had seen enough confrontations to recognize trouble brewing. "Is everything all right here, ladies?" "There's been some kind of mistake," Victoria announced, her voice carrying that particular tone wealthy people used when they expected immediate compliance. "This passenger is clearly in the wrong section." Maya remained seated, her dark eyes calm but alert. She'd experienced this before. The assumption that success had a specific color, a specific look. What Victoria didn't know was that Maya never traveled alone. 2 rows back in seat 12C, Marcus Thompson appeared to be just another businessman in his late 30s. The former FBI agent's casual clothes and relaxed posture masked 15 years of federal law enforcement experience. 3 rows ahead, in 8A, Sofia Martinez looked like any other professional traveler, her Hispanic features and designer glasses suggesting perhaps a lawyer or consultant. The ex-Secret Service agent had protected senators and cabinet members before Maya recruited her. Both security agents watched the developing situation with trained eyes, ready but not yet engaged. Carlos Rivera, a Hispanic businessman in seat 3, B glanced up from his laptop. The pharmaceutical sales director from Phoenix had been reviewing quarterly reports, but the tension was impossible to ignore. His finger hovered over his phone's camera app. "Ma'am, Jennifer said to Victoria, 'I'll need to see both tickets to resolve this.'" Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cold. "Of course. Though I suspect hers won't match the seat she's occupying." Maya reached into her bag with deliberate calm, producing her boarding pass and driver's license. The documents were legitimate, expensive, and exactly where they should be. Seat 2. A first class, purchased 3 days ago. Jennifer examined the documents, her confusion evident. Everything was in order. More than in order. Maya's ticket showed she'd paid full fare, not an upgrade or corporate discount. "This is ridiculous," Victoria snapped. "Do you know who I am? My family owns pharmaceutical patents worth hundreds of millions. We don't fly with—" She gestured vaguely at Maya, her meaning crystal clear. Amanda Foster, a middle school teacher from Austin, in seat 4. Hay looked up from her book with growing disgust. At 35, the white woman had taught enough diverse classrooms to recognize prejudice when she heard it. "Ma'am, she has her ticket." "What's the problem?" "The problem," Victoria said, turning her icy stare on Amanda, "is that standards have apparently slipped. When I pay for first class, I expect a certain environment. Dr. James Patterson, a pediatrician from Dallas in seat 5B, folded his newspaper with a sharp snap. The 50-year-old white man had heard enough. And what environment is that exactly? Victoria's smile never wavered, but her words grew sharper. One where passengers belong in their assigned sections. Not everyone can afford these accommodations legitimately. Isabella Santos, a college sophomore from UCLA in seat 6A, had been quietly watching the exchange while pretending to study. The 20-year-old Hispanic student pulled out her phone thumb, already moving to her TikTok app. This was exactly the kind of discrimination her generation refused to tolerate in silence. Maya finally spoke, her voice carrying quiet authority. Ms. Sinclair. Victoria Sinclair. Ms. Sinclair. I understand you have concerns. However, I'm exactly where I belong and I have no intention of moving. The words hung in the cabin air like a challenge. Other passengers were beginning to notice the confrontation. A few phones appeared, held discreetly but ready. The age of viral videos had taught people to document injustice. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. She wasn't used to resistance, especially not from someone she'd already decided didn't belong. Security, she called toward the cockpit. I need security. Jennifer stepped between the two women, her training kicking in. Ms. Sinclair, please lower your voice. We'll resolve this calmly. There's nothing to resolve, Maya said, her tablet now closed, full attention on the situation. I have my ticket, my identification, and my seat. That should be sufficient. Carlos Rivera made his decision. The camera on his phone started recording. This is Carlos Rivera, flight 447 from Miami to LAX. It's 8:52 a.m., and I'm witnessing what appears to be discrimination in first class. Hey, Victoria whirled on him. Put that away. Actually, Amanda Foster said, pulling out her own phone. I think this needs to be documented. I'm a teacher. I know discrimination when I see it. Isabella's TikTok was already live. Y'all, this is happening right now on my flight. This woman is trying to kick a passenger out of first class for basically being Latina. This is 2024, people. The comments started immediately. What airline report this? Get their names. Within minutes, Isabella's followers were sharing the stream. Victoria looked around the cabin with growing panic. This wasn't how first class was supposed to work. These people were supposed to be on her side, part of her world. Instead, they were turning phones on her like weapons. You're all being manipulated, she announced to the cabin. This woman obviously can't afford to be here. Look at her clothes. Look at how she's dressed. Maya glanced down at her outfit. Dark jeans, a navy blazer, simple jewelry. Comfortable clothes for a cross-country flight. Nothing that screamed wealth, which was intentional. She'd learned early in her career that drawing attention to her success often created more problems than solutions. My clothes are appropriate for travel, Maya said simply, just as my ticket is appropriate for this seat. Marcus Thompson shifted slightly in 12C. His practiced eye cataloged the cabin's mood, the passengers' positions, the flight crew's stress levels. Not yet time to intervene, but close. Sophia Martinez made similar calculations from 8A, her experience reading potential threats in real time. Jennifer tried one more time to de-escalate. Ms. Sinclair, perhaps we could offer you a different seat if you're uncomfortable. I'm not moving. Victoria's voice rose to a near shout. I pay for first class to avoid this exact situation. The words echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Even passengers who hadn't been paying attention turned to stare. The discrimination was now undeniable, witnessed by dozens and being broadcast live to hundreds. Dr. Patterson stood up slowly. Ma'am, you're embarrassing yourself and this airline. This woman has done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? Victoria's laugh was bitter. She's obviously using someone else's ticket, probably stolen credit cards. These people always stop. Maya's voice cut through Victoria's rant with quiet authority. She stood slowly, her full height matching Victoria's, despite the height difference her heels provided. "You've said enough." The cabin fell silent. Even the engine noise seemed to dim as 24 passengers and 3 crew members waited to see what would happen next. Maya Rodriguez, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, stood face-to-face with Victoria Sinclair, pharmaceutical heiress and entitled bigot. Neither woman blinked. The confrontation that would change everything was just beginning. Victoria Sinclair had never backed down from a fight in her life, and she wasn't about to start with someone she viewed as beneath her station. Her blue eyes glittered with the kind of righteous indignation that came from a lifetime of getting her way. "Exactly what I thought," Victoria said, her voice dripping with disdain. "No response because there is no legitimate response. Security needs to remove this woman immediately." Maya remained standing, her posture straight but relaxed. 32 years of life had taught her that dignity was more powerful than anger, that silence often spoke louder than shouting. She'd built a technology empire by staying calm under pressure, and this entitled woman wouldn't be the one to break her composure. "Ma'am, Jennifer Walsh said, stepping closer to Victoria, I'm going to need you to return to your seat while we sort this out." "Sort what out?" Victoria's voice rose another octave. "A non-passenger is occupying a seat she has no right to. This isn't complicated." Carlos Rivera angled his phone to capture both women clearly. His LinkedIn post was already writing itself in his head. Discrimination in corporate America didn't end when you boarded a plane. His pharmaceutical sales background had shown him enough boardroom bias to recognize the real thing. "This is insane," he muttered loud enough for his recording to pick up. "Ladies, got her ticket, got her ID. What more do you want?" Isabella Santos's TikTok feed exploded with comments. The viewer count climbed from dozens to hundreds to over 1,000 in real time. "Y'all seeing this pure racism at 35,000 feet? This blonde lady is losing her mind." Comments flooded in faster than she could read them. "What airline is this? Get the captain, report her. This is disgusting. Stand strong, Sister Amanda Foster." The teacher from Austin felt her educator instincts kick in. She'd seen bullies before, knew how they operated. "Ma'am, you need to stop this. You're creating a hostile environment for everyone." "Hostile?" Victoria whirled on Amanda. "I'll tell you what's hostile. Having to share premium accommodations with people who clearly don't belong." "I pay for first class for a reason." Dr. James Patterson shook his head in disgust. "And what reason is that? To avoid people who don't look like you. To avoid people who can't afford to be here," Victoria snapped back. "Look at her, jeans and a blazer. In first class. Please." Maya finally spoke, her voice steady and clear. "My clothes are comfortable for a 6-hour flight. They're also none of your business." "Everything about you is my business when you're sitting next to me," Victoria retorted. "I have a right to travel in the environment I paid for." From seat 12. C. Marcus Thompson watched the situation escalate. His FBI training had taught him to read body language to spot the moment when words might turn physical. Victoria was approaching that line, her gestures becoming more animated, her personal space violations more aggressive. Sophia Martinez in 8A made similar observations. The ex-Secret Service agent had protected politicians through hostile crowds. She recognized the signs of someone losing control in a public space. Neither security agent moved yet. Maya hadn't signaled for assistance, and their instructions were clear: observe and protect. But let Maya handle what she could handle herself. "You know what Carlos Rivera said, lowering his phone for a moment? I've heard enough. I'm calling this what it is. Discrimination. Pure and simple. Discrimination." Victoria's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "It's called maintaining standards. Something this generation clearly doesn't understand." Isabella's viewer count hit 2,000. The comments were unanimous in their outrage. Several viewers had already started identifying Victoria's voice, running facial recognition apps, digging into her background. The internet was weaponizing itself in real time. Ma'am Jennifer tried again. Her voice strained. "I need to ask you to return to your seat so we can—" "I'm not sitting down until this situation is resolved," Victoria declared. "Call the captain, call security, call whoever you need to call to remove this woman." Amanda Foster had heard enough. As an educator, she'd seen the damage that unchecked prejudice could cause. The only person who needs removing is you. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable. "My behavior—" Victoria's voice reached a new pitch. "I'm standing up for the standards that make first class worth purchasing, when anyone can just show up." "What's the point?" Dr. Patterson stood up slowly, his 6-foot frame imposing in the narrow cabin. "Ma'am, I'm a physician. I've treated patients of every race, every background, every economic level. And I've never seen behavior as disgraceful as yours." Maya watched the other passengers rally to her defense with quiet gratitude. She hadn't asked for their support, but their willingness to speak up proved that not everyone stayed silent when confronted with injustice. "You're all being fooled," Victoria insisted, looking around the cabin wildly. "She's obviously scamming the airline somehow. Stolen credit cards, fake identification, identity theft. It happens all the time with these people." The phrase hung in the air like poison gas. These people. The mask was completely off now. Carlos Rivera started a new recording angle. "Did everyone hear that? These people. We've got a full racist meltdown happening here." Isabella's TikTok viewers were screenshotting everything, sharing clips across platforms. Hashtag first-class racism was starting to trend. The incident was escaping the confines of the airplane cabin, spreading across the digital world like wildfire. "I want to see a supervisor," Victoria demanded. "I want to see the captain. I want corporate contact information. This is unacceptable customer service." Jennifer Walsh had been a flight attendant for 7 years. She'd handled drunk passengers, medical emergencies, and unruly children. But she'd never encountered discrimination, this blatant, this public, this documented. Her training didn't cover what to do when a passenger's bigotry went viral in real time. I'll call for the captain," she stammered. "Good," Victoria said triumphantly. "Finally, someone with authority who can resolve this properly." Maya pulled out her phone with deliberate calm. Not to record, not to defend herself, but to make a call. A business call that would change everything if Victoria had been smart enough to listen to the conversation. Patricia Maya said into the phone, "It's Maya. I'm on flight 447, and I need you to pull my American Airlines portfolio. Yes, the shareholding documents. Something's come up that requires immediate attention." Victoria was too busy arguing with Dr. Patterson to notice. "You people have no idea how business class travel works. There are unspoken rules, standards of behavior, appropriate clientele. The only inappropriate behavior I see," Dr. Patterson interrupted, "is yours. That woman has been nothing but polite while you've been nothing but racist." Amanda Foster nodded vigorously. "Exactly. She's sitting quietly minding her own business. You're the one causing the disturbance." Isabella's follower count continued climbing. The story was spreading beyond TikTok, now jumping to Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. Screenshots and video clips circulated with captions like, "Karen meltdown at 35,000 feet" and "When racism meets real consequences." Maya finished her phone call and looked directly at Victoria. "Ms. Sinclair, I'm going to give you one opportunity to apologize and return to your seat. After that, this situation will be handled differently." Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "Apologize? To you? I think you have this situation backwards, sweetie. You're the one who's going to be apologizing when security drags you back to economy where you belong." "That's it," Carlos Rivera said, holding up his phone. I've got everything recorded. This lady's career is over. Her career, Amanda Foster asked. Posted her face on LinkedIn. Someone already identified her in the comments. Victoria Sinclair, pharmaceutical heiress. Family money, but apparently no family values. Victoria's face went pale. Social media was a double-edged sword she'd never learned to wield carefully. The same internet that had elevated her lifestyle posts and charity gala photos could just as easily destroy her reputation. Delete that, she hissed at Carlos. Not a chance. The world needs to see who you really are. Maya watched the exchange with growing certainty that Victoria would never back down on her own. Pride and prejudice had combined to create a perfect storm of stubbornness. Only external pressure would end this confrontation. Marcus Thompson shifted in his seat. The time for intervention was approaching rapidly. Victoria's behavior was escalating beyond mere discrimination into potential security threat territory. Sophia Martinez made similar calculations. A passenger this aggressive, this unhinged, could pose dangers beyond simple bigotry. Isabella's TikTok viewers hit 5,000. The comments were demanding action. Where's the captain? Why isn't she being arrested? What airline is this? Corporate needs to see this. Jennifer Walsh disappeared toward the cockpit, her face flushed with stress. The situation had spiraled far beyond her training or experience. Victoria noticed the flight attendant's retreat and smiled grimly. Finally, real authority. Someone who understands how business class is supposed to work. She had no idea that real authority was about to arrive in a form she couldn't possibly expect. Maya checked her watch. 9:03 a.m. 16 minutes since Victoria first demanded she move. 16 minutes that would change both their lives forever. The captain was coming. Heavy footsteps approached from the cockpit, and Captain Robert O'Brien emerged into the first-class cabin. At 52, the Irish-American pilot had logged over 20,000 flight hours and handled every conceivable crisis except overt passenger discrimination documented by half a dozen cameras. His weathered face showed the kind of authority that came from keeping hundreds of lives safe above the clouds. What seems to be the problem here? His voice carried the calm command that came naturally after 15 years of commercial aviation. Victoria immediately straightened, smoothing her silk blouse and adjusting her posture to project maximum respectability. This was her moment, her chance to speak to someone with real power who would surely understand the natural order of things. Captain, thank goodness, she gushed, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Victoria Sinclair. My family has significant investments in the airline industry. I need your help resolving a very uncomfortable situation. Captain O'Brien didn't take her hand. Instead, his eyes swept the cabin, taking in the dozen phones pointed in his direction, the tense faces of 24 passengers, and the calm dignity of the woman seated in 2A. Ms. Sinclair. I understand you've been disrupting this flight. Explain yourself. Victoria blinked, clearly expecting support rather than interrogation. Disrupting, Captain. I'm trying to maintain the standards that your premium passengers pay for. This woman obviously doesn't belong in first class, and when I politely pointed that out... Politely, Carlos Rivera interjected, his phone still recording. Captain, I've got the whole thing on video. Nothing polite about calling someone these people and demanding they prove they belong. Amanda Foster nodded vigorously. She's been absolutely horrible. Racist comments, demands for removal, completely inappropriate behavior. Isabella's TikTok stream hit 8,000 viewers. The comment section was exploding with demands for action. Arrest her. Lifetime ban. This is America in 2024. Captain O'Brien turned to Maya. Ma'am, are you the passenger in question? Maya stood gracefully, maintaining her composure despite being the center of attention. Maya Rodriguez, seat 2A. I have my boarding pass and identification if you need to see them. Something flickered in the captain's eyes at the name, but he simply nodded. That won't be necessary. Ms. Sinclair. What exactly is your complaint about Ms. Rodriguez? Victoria launched into her prepared speech. "Captain, when I pay for first class, I expect a certain caliber of passenger. Look at her appearance, jeans, and a casual blazer. That's not appropriate for premium seating. And her behavior when questioned suggests she's not legitimate. I suspect credit card fraud, possibly stolen identity documents." The accusations hung in the air like explosives waiting to detonate. Dr. Patterson couldn't contain himself. "Captain, that's pure racism. This woman has been sitting quietly, minding her own business, while Ms. Sinclair has been making scene after scene, a scene Victoria whirled on him. I'm protecting the investment that legitimate passengers make in first-class service. When standards disappear, what's the point of premium pricing?" Maya spoke quietly, her voice carrying unusual authority. "Captain O'Brien, perhaps you should contact your operations center before this goes any further." Victoria laughed triumphantly. "Yes, contact operations. They'll verify that this woman doesn't belong in first class." Captain O'Brien studied Maya's face more carefully. Something about her calm confidence, her suggestion to contact operations, the way she carried herself despite being under attack, it all suggested someone with significant experience handling high-pressure situations. "Ma'am, are you in the airline industry yourself, in a manner of speaking?" Maya replied diplomatically. "What's that supposed to mean?" Victoria demanded. "Either you work for an airline or you don't. Stop being evasive." Marcus Thompson had heard enough. The former FBI agent rose from his seat in 12C, his movement drawing immediate attention. At 6'2", with the bearing of law enforcement, he commanded respect simply by standing. "Ms. Sinclair," he said quietly, "I think you should reconsider your approach here." Victoria stared at him in shock. "Who are you?" "You were sitting in coach. I was sitting where I needed to be," Marcus replied evenly. Sophia Martinez also stood from seat 8. Her professional demeanor immediately obvious to anyone with security training. The Hispanic ex-Secret Service agent moved with the fluid confidence of someone accustomed to protecting high-value targets. Captain O'Brien's experience kicked in. 2 passengers with obvious security backgrounds positioning themselves protectively near Maya Rodriguez. Professional bearing, coordinated movement, calm authority. Either they were undercover federal agents or private security. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said carefully, "do these individuals work with you?" Maya glanced at her security team and made a decision. The charade had gone far enough. "They do. Captain, before this situation escalates any further, I suggest you verify my identity with your corporate office." Victoria's face flushed red with indignation. "Corporate office? What kind of scam are you running now? Fake security guards, imaginary corporate connections." She was interrupted by the captain's radio crackling to life. "Captain O'Brien, this is operations. We're showing a priority passenger alert for Flight 447. Please confirm status of Maya Rodriguez, seat 2A. The cabin fell dead silent. Even the engine noise seemed to fade as 24 passengers and 3 crew members absorbed the implications of that single radio transmission. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Priority passenger. What does that mean? Maya pulled out her phone again, this time putting it on speaker. "Patricia, are you there?" "Yes, Maya. I have the documentation ready. Should I send it to the aircraft?" "Please do. And contact the American Airlines board liaison. This situation requires their immediate attention." Maya, Captain O'Brien's voice carried new respect and growing concern. "As in Maya Rodriguez Digital Bridge Solutions." The name hit the cabin like a thunderclap. Isabella's TikTok exploded with comments. Viewers were frantically Googling the name, sharing screenshots of search results, spreading the revelation across social media. "She's a billionaire, CEO. Holy shit, that racist lady just discriminated against a tech mogul. This is about to get serious." Carlos. Rivera lowered his phone, his eyes wide. "Digital Bridge Solutions. The cybersecurity company. You're worth billions. Victoria staggered backward as if physically struck. The woman she'd been berating for the past 20 minutes wasn't just a legitimate first-class passenger. She was one of the most successful technology entrepreneurs in the country. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. You're dressed like someone who values comfort over appearance, Maya finished. Like someone who doesn't need designer labels to prove her worth. Amanda Foster started laughing, not mockery, but the kind of laughter that came from justice finally being served. Oh my God. You've been discriminating against someone who probably makes more in a day than you see in a year. Dr. Patterson shook his head in amazement. Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize for what you've had to endure. This is absolutely disgraceful. Captain O'Brien's radio crackled again. Captain O'Brien, priority passenger is confirmed. Maya Rodriguez, Digital Bridge Solutions, CEO, major American Airlines stakeholder. Please ensure VIP treatment for remainder of flight. Victoria's world crumbled in real time. Not only had she publicly humiliated herself in front of dozens of witnesses and thousands of social media viewers, she'd done it to someone with the power to destroy her family's business relationships across multiple industries. I didn't know, Victoria stammered. You didn't know because you didn't ask, Maya replied calmly. You made assumptions based on appearance and prejudice. That's the definition of discrimination. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. Passengers who had remained silent throughout the confrontation now felt safe to express their support. The sound was thunderous in the confined space. Victoria looked around desperately, seeking escape or support and finding neither. Every face showed disgust, disappointment, or outright anger. She was completely alone in a crowd of witnesses to her bigotry. Marcus Thompson spoke into his earpiece too quietly for most passengers to hear, but loud enough for Victoria to catch fragments. Situation contained. No physical threat. Subject isolated. Sophia Martinez made similar preparations, ensuring exits were clear and other passengers remained safe. Captain O'Brien made his decision. Ms. Sinclair, you'll need to gather your belongings and move to a different section of the aircraft. Move. Victoria's voice cracked. But I paid for first class. This is discrimination against me. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Maya finally stood to her full height, looking Victoria directly in the eyes. Ms. Sinclair, you have spent the last 25 minutes demanding that I prove I belong in the seat I purchased. Now it's your turn. Prove to these passengers that you belong in their company. Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. How could she prove something that everyone already knew was false? She didn't belong, not because of her ticket, but because of her character. The confrontation was over. What came next would change everything. Captain O'Brien's radio erupted with activity as word spread through American Airlines Operations Center. The voice of Margaret Chen, Senior Vice President of Customer Relations, crackled through the static with unmistakable urgency. Captain O'Brien, this is Margaret Chen from corporate headquarters. We understand Ms. Rodriguez is aboard your aircraft and has experienced discrimination from another passenger. Please confirm status immediately. The captain keyed his radio, acutely aware that 24 passengers were hanging on every word. Operations situation is confirmed. Passenger Victoria Sinclair has been verbally harassing Ms. Rodriguez for approximately 30 minutes. Multiple witnesses, extensive video documentation. Victoria's face drained of all color. Corporate headquarters was involved. This wasn't going away quietly. Captain Margaret's voice continued. Ms. Rodriguez holds a significant ownership stake in American Airlines through Digital Bridge's investment portfolio. She's also a member of our Platinum Advisory Board. This incident requires immediate action. Isabella's TikTok stream had exploded to 15,000 viewers. Comments flooded in faster than she could read. This lady picked the wrong person to mess with. When racism meets reality, she's about to learn who really owns this airline. Maya remained seated, her composure unshakable, despite being the center of a rapidly expanding corporate crisis. She'd handled hostile takeovers, federal investigations, and congressional hearings with the same calm dignity. Victoria finally found her voice. Ownership stake. That's impossible. She's what Dr. Patterson challenged. Not white enough to own stock. Not dressed expensively enough to be successful. Carlos Rivera had switched to his LinkedIn live stream addressing his professional network directly. I'm witnessing a masterclass in why diversity and inclusion training matters. This woman just discriminated against someone who literally helps fund the airline she's flying. Amanda Foster was frantically texting her principal. This was exactly the kind of real-world example she could use in her classroom discussions about prejudice and assumptions. The fact that it was happening in real time, documented and viral, made it even more powerful. Marcus Thompson received a text message on his secure phone. His expression shifted subtly as he read Maya's instructions. The former FBI agent moved closer to Victoria with practiced authority. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and come with me." Come with you, where Victoria's voice pitched higher. "You can't make me do anything. You're not even airline staff." Sofia Martinez approached from the other side, her Secret Service training evident in her precise movements. "Miss Sinclair, we can do this quietly, or we can make it a bigger scene than it already is. Your choice." Captain O'Brien's radio crackled again. "Captain, this is Senior Vice President Chen. Please be advised that Ms. Rodriguez's legal team is already in contact with our corporate counsel. We need complete documentation of this incident and immediate resolution." Victoria looked around the cabin desperately. "This is insane. I'm being railroaded. I have rights." "You absolutely have rights," Maya said, standing slowly. "The same rights I had when you demanded I prove my worth based on the color of my skin and my choice of clothing." Isabella's viewer count hit 20,000. The incident had transcended TikTok, spreading across Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit. #Victoria Sinclair was trending nationally. "Miss Rodriguez," Captain O'Brien said with newfound respect, "how would you like us to proceed?" Maya considered the question carefully. She had the power to destroy Victoria's life with a phone call. The social media coverage alone would probably accomplish that anyway. But revenge had never been her style. "Captain, I want this incident documented fully. Every passenger who witnessed it should have their statements recorded. The video evidence should be preserved. And I want assurance that American Airlines will review its training procedures to prevent similar incidents." Victoria sensed an opening. "See? She's reasonable. We can work this out privately. No need for corporate involvement or legal action." Maya turned to face Victoria directly. "Ms. Sinclair, there's nothing private about discrimination. Your behavior was public witnessed and recorded. The consequences will be equally public." Carlos Rivera held up his phone, already posted to LinkedIn with full context. "Your face, your name, your comments about these people, all documented." Amanda Foster nodded grimly. "Same here. Posted to my teacher groups. This is going to be a case study in prejudice for years." Dr. Patterson shook his head. "I've sent this to my medical colleagues. Healthcare workers need to see what discrimination looks like in the wild." Victoria's breathing became rapid and shallow. Her perfect world of privilege and prejudice was crumbling in real-time broadcast to thousands of strangers who would judge her character based on her own words and actions. "Please," she whispered to Maya. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can't we just forget this happened?" Maya's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "Ms. Sinclair, apologies offered only after consequences become clear aren't really apologies. their attempts at damage control. Captain O'Brien received another radio transmission. Captain Corporate has authorized immediate passenger removal for Ms. Sinclair. She'll be transferred to economy seating for the remainder of the flight and placed on our no-fly list pending full investigation. The words hit Victoria like physical blows. No-fly list. Her family traveled constantly for business. This could affect pharmaceutical conferences, medical symposiums, international investments. "You can't ban me from flying," she protested. "My family does millions in business with airlines." Margaret Chen's voice came through the radio clearly. "Ms. Sinclair's business is insignificant compared to our relationship with Digital Bridge Solutions and Ms. Rodriguez personally. The decision is final." Isabella was reading comments to her viewers. Justice served. This is why we need diversity in business. That CEO is handling this with class. Maya pulled out her phone again. "Patricia, connect me to our legal team. I want discrimination charges filed within the hour." Victoria lurched forward. "Legal charges. For what? I didn't touch anyone. This is just words." "Words have power." "Ms. Sinclair, words reveal character, and your words revealed someone who believes certain people don't deserve equal treatment based on their appearance." Marcus Thompson gently took Victoria's arm. "Ma'am, it's time to go. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Get your hands off me." Victoria yanked away. "This is assault. These aren't even real security guards." Sofia Martinez produced her identification. "Former Secret Service, currently employed by Digital Bridge Solutions Corporate Security. We are very real, and we have full authority to ensure Ms. Rodriguez's safety." The revelation sent another shock through the cabin. Not only had Victoria discriminated against a billionaire CEO, she'd done it to someone with federal-level security protection. Captain O'Brien made his announcement to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for this disruption. Ms. Sinclair will be relocating to accommodate other passengers. We appreciate your patience and understanding." Victoria's last-ditch effort came out as a desperate whisper. "Maya, Ms. Rodriguez, please. I have a daughter, a family reputation. This will destroy everything." Maya studied Victoria's face for a long moment. For the first time since the confrontation began, she saw genuine fear rather than entitled anger. "Ms. Sinclair, you should have thought about your daughter before you decided to teach her that discrimination is acceptable. You should have considered your family reputation before you revealed your true character to the world." Marcus Thompson guided Victoria toward the rear of the aircraft. Her designer heels clicked against the floor like a countdown timer marking the end of her privileged world. Sofia Martinez followed, ensuring the transition proceeded smoothly. The first-class cabin erupted in applause as Victoria disappeared toward economy seating. But Maya didn't join in the celebration. She understood that justice wasn't about humiliation. It was about accountability. Captain O'Brien approached her seat. "Ms. Rodriguez, again, our sincere apologies. Is there anything else we can do to make your flight comfortable?" Maya resumed her seat, smoothing her jeans and adjusting her blazer, the same clothes that had triggered Victoria's prejudice. "Captain, just ensure this incident is properly documented. Change happens when people face real consequences for discriminatory behavior." Isabella ended her TikTok stream with 25,000 viewers. The video would be shared millions of times over the coming hours, becoming a viral sensation that sparked nationwide conversations about racism, privilege, and accountability. Carlos Rivera posted his final LinkedIn update. "Discrimination has consequences. Character revealed under pressure. Justice served at 35,000 feet." Amanda Foster was already planning her next classroom discussion. Her students would see firsthand how prejudice crumbled when confronted with truth. Dr. Patterson returned to his newspaper, but the words blurred as he reflected on what he'd witnessed. He'd stood up when it mattered, and that felt more important than any medical procedure he'd performed. Maya pulled out her tablet and returned to reviewing cybersecurity protocols. Tomorrow's meeting with Hollywood executives would proceed as planned, but tonight, the entertainment industry would be talking about something else entirely. The aircraft settled into its cruising altitude. In first class, passengers exchanged contact information and shared social media posts. They'd witnessed history, the moment when old-fashioned prejudice met modern consequences. In economy, Victoria Sinclair sat in a middle seat between two passengers who'd already seen the viral videos. They knew exactly who she was and what she'd done. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Friends asking if the videos were real. Business associates distancing themselves. Her pharmaceutical company's stock price dropping as investors worried about reputational damage. The flight from Miami to Los Angeles would take 6 hours. For Maya Rodriguez, it was 6 hours closer to changing how the airline industry handled discrimination. For Victoria Sinclair, it was 6 hours of facing the consequences of a lifetime of unchecked prejudice. The sky was clear, the weather perfect, and justice was finally being served. The remaining 4 hours of Flight 447 passed in stark contrast to its explosive beginning. First class had transformed from a battlefield into something resembling a diversity and inclusion seminar, with passengers sharing stories of their own encounters with discrimination and prejudice. Carlos Rivera found himself in deep conversation with Dr. Patterson about unconscious bias in professional settings. The pharmaceutical sales director's LinkedIn post had already garnered over 50,000 views and hundreds of comments from colleagues sharing similar experiences. Amanda Foster was taking notes for her students, documenting how ordinary people could stand up against injustice when they witnessed it happening. Her principal had already called to discuss incorporating the incident into their curriculum on social justice and civic responsibility. Isabella Santos had become an inadvertent celebrity. Her TikTok account gained 30,000 new followers in a single day, and news outlets were reaching out for interviews. The college sophomore from UCLA was still processing how her documenting of discrimination had sparked a national conversation. Maya Rodriguez worked quietly on her tablet, responding to messages from her legal team, her board of directors, and dozens of news organizations requesting statements. She crafted her responses carefully, focusing on institutional change rather than personal vindictiveness. Patricia, she set into her phone draft a statement for release tonight. Emphasize that this incident represents an opportunity for the airline industry to examine its training procedures and commitment to equal treatment. Don't mention Ms. Sinclair by name. In economy, Victoria Sinclair's world continued collapsing in real time. Her phone showed missed calls from her pharmaceutical company's board of directors, her country club membership committee, and 3 different public relations firms offering crisis management services. The passenger beside her, a young black engineer from Georgia, had recognized her from the viral videos. Instead of confronting her, he'd quietly moved to an empty seat. His rejection was somehow worse than anger would have been. Victoria stared out the window at clouds that looked like cotton balls against an infinite blue sky. 6 hours ago, she'd been a pharmaceutical heiress flying first class to a business meeting in Los Angeles. Now she was unemployed, banned from American Airlines, and facing potential legal action for discrimination. The steward serving economy meals recognized her too. His service was professionally polite, but noticeably cold. Word had spread throughout the aircraft crew about the first-class incident. Captain O'Brien received regular updates from American Airlines headquarters. The company's crisis management team was working overtime to address the public relations nightmare. Stock prices had dipped as investors worried about potential lawsuits and federal investigations. Margaret Chen's voice crackled through the radio. Captain, we've received confirmation that Ms. Rodriguez will not be pursuing individual legal action against the airline. However, she's working with civil rights organizations to ensure comprehensive industry changes. The announcement brought relief to the crew, but terror to Victoria. Civil rights organizations meant national attention, federal oversight, and systematic reform that could affect every airline in the country. As Flight 447 began its descent into Los Angeles, Maya received a call that would reshape the incident's aftermath. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Reverend Michael Washington from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We've been monitoring the situation on your flight. Would you be willing to discuss turning this incident into a broader initiative for transportation equality? Maya considered the request carefully. She'd built digital bridge solutions by focusing on technology, not activism. But sometimes circumstances chose your battles for you. Reverend Washington, I'm interested. But any initiative needs to focus on results, not rhetoric. Real training, real policies, real accountability. Isabella overheard part of the conversation and started a new TikTok video. Y'all, this is bigger than one racist woman on a plane. This is about changing how people get treated when they travel. This CEO is about to change everything. The landing at LAX was smooth, but the disembarkation was anything but normal. News crews waited at the gate, having been alerted by the viral social media coverage. Airport security had been briefed about potential crowd control issues. Maya was met by her West Coast security team, 3 additional agents who'd driven from her Beverly Hills office. They formed a protective corridor through the media scrum. Ms. Rodriguez, how do you respond to the discrimination you faced? Will you be suing American Airlines? What message does this send to other travelers? Maya paused at the gate podium, her security team creating space for a brief statement. Cameras from 6 different news organizations focused on her face. Today's incident demonstrates that discrimination exists at every level of American society, she said, her voice carrying across the crowded gate area. But it also proves that witnesses to injustice have the power to speak up and create change. I thank the passengers who documented what happened and refused to let prejudice go unchallenged. Victoria attempted to slip past the media unnoticed, but her distinctive blonde hair and designer clothing made her immediately recognizable. Cameras swiveled to capture her hasty retreat through the airport. Ms. Sinclair, do you have any comment about your behavior on the flight? Will you be issuing an apology? How do you respond to calls for your prosecution? Victoria kept walking her heels, clicking rapidly against the terminal floor. Her pharmaceutical company had already released a statement distancing itself from her comments and announcing her immediate termination. Carlos Rivera was approached by business reporters interested in the professional implications of discriminatory behavior. His LinkedIn article had been shared by executives across industries, sparking discussions about workplace bias and corporate accountability. Dr. Patterson fielded questions from medical journalists about healthcare equality and the responsibility of professionals to speak up against discrimination. His status as a pediatrician lent additional weight to his criticism of Victoria's behavior. Amanda Foster was contacted by education reporters discussing how the incident could be used to teach students about civil rights, social media responsibility, and the power of witnessing. Within hours of landing, the Flight 447 incident had spawned dozens of news articles, academic discussions, and corporate policy reviews. American Airlines announced a comprehensive review of its diversity training programs and customer service protocols. Digital Bridge Solutions' stock price rose as investors recognized Maya's skillful handling of a crisis situation and the positive publicity surrounding her dignity under pressure. Victoria Sinclair's pharmaceutical company stock fell as analysts worried about potential boycotts and regulatory scrutiny. 3 major medical conferences withdrew speaking invitations, and 2 pharmaceutical trade associations launched ethics investigations. That evening, Maya sat in her Beverly Hills home office watching news coverage of the incident on 3 different channels. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and partnership proposals from civil rights organizations. "This wasn't how I planned to spend my flight home," she told her assistant Patricia over video call. "But maybe it's the platform I needed to create real change." Patricia nodded from the screen. "The response has been incredible. 15 airlines have reached out asking for consulting on diversity initiatives. The Department of Transportation wants to discuss federal guidelines for handling discrimination complaints. Maya smiled for the first time since boarding Flight 447. Schedule the meetings. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Across the city, Victoria Sinclair sat alone in a downtown hotel room, having been asked to leave her originally planned accommodation after management recognized her from the viral videos. Her legal team had advised complete media silence while they assessed potential criminal exposure for federal civil rights violations. Her daughter called from college crying. Classmates had seen the videos. The pharmaceutical scholarship Victoria's family had funded for decades was being renamed. A lifetime of privilege was evaporating because of 25 minutes of revealed character. The irony was complete. The woman who'd demanded Maya prove she belonged somewhere now couldn't find anywhere that would accept her. Hey everyone, it's me. Back with some thoughts after diving deep into Maya Rodriguez's incredible story. I've covered hundreds of these discrimination incidents over the years, but this one hits different for several reasons that I think we all need to talk about. First, let's acknowledge what Maya did right. When Victoria Sinclair launched her racist attack, Maya didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't threaten, and didn't stoop to that level of ugliness. She stayed calm, stayed dignified, and let her character speak for itself. That's not easy when someone's attacking your right to exist in a space you've legitimately earned. But Maya understood something that Victoria never learned: your response to discrimination reveals more about you than the discrimination itself. What struck me most was how the other passengers rallied around Maya. Carlos Rivera, Amanda Foster, Dr. Patterson, Isabella Santos. None of them knew she was a billionaire CEO when they started defending her. They stood up because they recognized basic human dignity under attack. That's the lesson here, folks. You don't defend someone because of their bank account or their business card. You defend them because it's the right thing to do. Isabella's decision to live stream the incident changed everything. Some people criticize social media for enabling mob justice, but this case shows its power for documenting truth. Without those videos, this becomes a he said, she said situation that disappears into corporate bureaucracy. With documentation, it becomes a catalyst for real change across an entire industry. Now let's talk about Victoria Sinclair. I'm not going to pile on someone whose life has already been destroyed by her own choices, but I will say this. Prejudice isn't just morally wrong, it's strategically stupid. In our interconnected world, you never know who you're talking to, who's watching, or how quickly your worst moment can become global news. Beyond that, discrimination is just plain exhausting. Imagine carrying that much hate around every day, constantly judging people, constantly feeling threatened by others' success. What a miserable way to live. The aftermath of Flight 447 proves that real change happens when consequences meet visibility. American Airlines didn't reform their training because they suddenly developed a conscience. They reformed because millions of people watched Maya get discriminated against and demanded better. Victoria didn't lose her job because one person complained. She lost it because the entire world saw who she really was. But here's what I want everyone watching this to remember. You don't need to be a billionaire to deserve respect, and you don't need security guards to stand up for yourself. Maya's dignity came from within, not from her bank account. Her composure came from character, not from corporate power. Those are qualities every single one of us can develop. If you ever find yourself in Maya's situation, remember her example. Stay calm, document what's happening if possible, and let truth be your defense. If you ever find yourself witnessing discrimination like the passengers on Flight 447, speak up. Your voice matters. Your testimony can change someone's life. And if you ever find yourself thinking like Victoria Sinclair, if you catch yourself making assumptions about who belongs where based on appearance or race or class, stop. Check yourself. Ask why you feel threatened by someone else's presence in a space they've legitimately earned. That discomfort you're feeling isn't about them. It's about you. Maya Rodriguez turned 25 minutes of discrimination into a lifetime commitment to transportation equality. She could have taken her settlement money and moved on, but instead, she chose to use her platform to ensure other travelers never face what she experienced. That's the kind of leadership our world needs more of. This story isn't just about airplane seats or first-class cabins. It's about the fact that in 2024, we're still fighting battles that should have been won decades ago. But it's also about the power each of us has to create change. One conversation, one stand, one viral video at a time. If Maya's story inspired you, share it. If it challenged you, sit with that feeling. If it motivated you to speak up against discrimination, you witnessed then Flight 447 accomplished something bigger than justice for one passenger. It created a movement for justice for everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring. And remember, the seat you choose to occupy in life should be determined by your character, not someone else's prejudice. Keep standing up, keep speaking out, and keep believing that dignity will always triumph over discrimination. Until next time, safe travels, everyone.